Hello all, you are about to hear a brief retelling of the TV series Silo. There comes a moment on Earth when all of its inhabitants find themselves in a huge 140-story bunker, but who built it and why they are forced to hide no one knows, since all the information has been destroyed. The sheriff's wife decides to find out the truth, and thus starts a chain of defiance. Sheriff Baker Halston removes his badge, puts his room in order, and goes out to the gallery of the hideout. No one knows why people are here, who built it, and why the world outside is the way it is. No one knows when it will be possible to go outside, but that day is clearly not yet here. Arriving at his office, Halston writes a letter and asks his assistant to come into the isolation room after the coffee reception. He himself walks through the door, closes the bars behind him, and throws away the key. To the astonished assistant, he tells him that he wants to see his wife, the body that lies behind the dusty porthole outside the opening, and to declare his desire to leave the asylum is equivalent to voluntary exile, which is death. As the dumbfounded deputy goes to coordinate the sheriff's application, he remembers his wife. An ordinary morning, the couple have coffee and receive their long-awaited permission to have a baby. The family has a year ahead of them to conceive and give birth to their successor. Those around them congratulate the couple on the wonderful event. Suddenly, Gloria, an oddball woman in years, approaches their table, who has a reputation as a quack, and asks Allison to come into her room. She is happy to help in her attempt to get pregnant and carry a child, but Halston chases her away. The woman is childless herself. How can she help? Later, the couple goes to the doctor, who pulls a contraceptive capsule out of Allison. Now she has every chance of becoming a mother, especially since this is her third attempt. The days begin to count down, but so far no results are achieved by the couple, despite the fact that Allison follows all the advice of those around her. One day the woman's boss reprimands her. She replaced an article on the web about deleted files on old media without consulting him. The article is deleted, and she should know that this is a serious violation, because people are not allowed to restore rarities. Allison later shares the incident with her husband. She doesn't understand why it's impossible to post about the materials removed by the rebels, because the measure constantly reminds everyone of the sanctity of history in the memory of generations. The lawmen send anyone with a relic from the old days to the mines. Halston asks that the law be obeyed, for if a bunch of trespassers want a glimpse of the outside world and they open the hatch, the asylum is over. Allison disagrees with her husband, but she has other worries, for time is running out, but she still can't get pregnant. Come Freedom Day, a holiday celebrated after the last mutiny, the bunker measures are concerned that the outer lens is getting more and more contaminated. On the one hand, this is good, as it means that there are no criminals among the residents who are sent to be cleaned up, but on the other hand, people need to see the world around them. In the meantime, Gloria lures Allison into her room, where she cautiously questions the woman about the broken servers and burned books. Did the rebels really do it, and why? And informs her that she can never have children, she just won't be allowed. Later, Allison relays this conversation to her husband, but he advises her not to believe the crazy grandmother. That same day, the woman gets an assignment to work in the town programmer's small workshop. It's Freedom Day, but her husband is on duty, so she's willing to work her allotted time. Allison walks to the workshop through the holiday galleries, where there are performances, people drinking and partying. She is greeted enthusiastically by programmer George. He has long wanted to consult her specifically because he read her post about deleted files and shows her the forbidden thing, an old hard drive. He manages to run it, but can't read the files. Allison takes the job. Meanwhile, Mayor gives a congratulatory speech praising the laws of asylum. Exactly 140 years ago, they defended freedom by forbidding the rebels to open the doors to the outside world. They destroyed all information about the past life. But the hero founders saved the remnants of civilization. At this time, Allison manages to open the disc, but the woman is frightened and leaves after asking George to destroy the relic. The people in the galleries rejoice, celebrating their victory, while George examines a plan of the entire vast asylum and finds an obscure tunnel at the bottom. Allison joins the fellow citizens, who memorialize their ancestors and launch flying flashlights. But her head is busy with her new discovery and she cannot think about anything else. Her husband notices her condition, but she excuses herself with fatigue. The next day, Allison leaves work and goes to Gloria's to find out why she has been denied children. Later, she informs her husband that she wants to take the day off and just go for a walk, and she goes to George herself and asks him to show her everything. Upon opening one of the files, the couple are amazed. Upon returning home, Allison receives a message from the doctor. Time is up, and they have an appointment tomorrow. The woman asks her husband to wait for her there, but Halston waits in vain in the waiting room. Allison never comes. The man goes to work, but she's not there either, so he runs home and finds his wife sitting at his desk. She asks him for a talk. The likes of her will never be allowed to have children because the uppers need the obedient and submissive. He is a man of the law, and she could not speak without proof. But now the evidence is there, and Allison shows her own hand-carved contraceptive capsule. The doctor tricks them into seeing the blood. Halston runs after the doctor, but when they return, Allison is no longer in the room. They find her in the dining room, where she accuses the government of hiding the truth about the present situation outside and utters forbidden words about wanting to leave the bunker. The law forces her out, and the sheriff has to arrest his own wife. Mayor tries to think of some way around the law, but there is no way out. There were too many witnesses. The lawmen search Gloria's house and George's workshop, but find nothing illegal. No one understands what has led the woman to such an idea, but they proceed to carry out the tradition. While a space suit is being prepared for Allison, Halston does not leave her cell, and the woman tries to convince him that she is not crazy and knows what she is doing. The authorities have options for this, but she reminds him that all exiles must clean the lens of the external video camera. Now, if it's really dead outside, she won't do it, but if the world is alive, she'll wipe the glass, and that will be a signal to him. If it's as she thinks it is, Allison will go up the hill, learn the truth, and come back for him. The exorcism moment arrives. Allison is fitted with a space suit and a special rag to clean the lens in her pocket. Halston reads the traditional words of farewell and cries hearing his wife's last words, in which she confesses her love for him. The woman's helmet is fastened on and she is sent outside. Hundreds of people follow her on monitors. Here she appears in front of the screen and cleans her lens, and then smiles into the face of her smitten husband and walks toward the dried-up tree on the hill. But before she reaches it, she falls and remains motionless. 2 years pass. One day a deputy reports to the sheriff about the death of George, who, after exiling Allison, was transferred to the lower level to the mechanics. The guy has fallen off the gallery, but the woman engineer who works with George is convinced that he didn't end up dead himself, but that he was murdered. The sheriff examines the dead man's body and goes to the lower level to talk to a witness. And now, sitting behind bars awaiting banishment, he confesses that it was after meeting Juliet that he learned to listen, something Allison could never get him to do, so he is willing to go and find his wife. The astonished assistant points to a figure outside the window, but Halston is sure it is not Allison. Exile day arrives. Halston apologizes for the disturbance, bids farewell to the aide, and steps to the door out of the bunker. He walks up the long hallway, as people gather in the dining room to see the sheriff's final hours, and as he looks at the world around him, he realizes Allison was right. Everything around him is green. Birds are singing and the sun is shining, and he begins to wipe the lens. The onlookers cheer. The ride is perfect, and the sheriff goes to his wife's body, but you can see that he is getting sick. To the surprised cheers, he pulls his helmet off his head and crawls to a tree, but falls down next to it. Juliet is furious. He is cheated. The sheriff's death has a stirring effect on the people. Excitement begins, but the lawmen calm the population, and Juliet comes down and screams, letting out her anger. Meanwhile, the deputy reads his last orders. To appoint Juliet to take his place, the man goes to the mayor, while Juliet gives herself fully to her work on the lower level. The deputy catches the mayor knitting things for the newborn, once doing it 25 times a year, but now she's barely making 5. She is very discouraged that she has sent the sheriff to the cleaners, something that has never happened in the history of the bunker. And so far she can't find a replacement for him, as the deputy refuses to take the job. All lately she's been looking through the mayor's logs and has caught herself thinking that she knows nothing about the cause of the uprising. The woman worries about the emotional state of the population, and she has a lot to worry about. The people are buying up hammers and sledgehammers en masse, and more quarrels are erupting in the streets, which the lawmen have managed so far. One day, Juliet comes to her friend the repairman. The latter immediately notices the woman's anger and excitement and asks her to share her problems. And after hesitating, Juliet confesses that it's about George. She is sure he was murdered because he wanted to show something at the last meeting. George didn't want those around him to know about their relationship, so he didn't come to the repairman's party, but still stopped by for a minute to make an appointment for the evening at her place. Juliet came home late, but George wasn't in his room, but there was a pouch with an obscure rarity inside, and a note asking him to remember the place where she had seen the thing. In the morning, the woman walked to the dining room, catching sympathetic glances and not understanding what had happened. It was only at breakfast that she learned of her beloved's death. Having survived the first shock, she goes to the lawkeeper and reports the murder of a programmer. He takes her to the sheriff. They examine the scene together, and the girl again claims that George could not end his life. It all happened in the middle of the night, and the only witnesses could have been couriers. Holston also draws attention to her watch, but Juliet assures her that it is not a rarity. The girl examines George's body, but finds no unusual injuries. Later, they talk over lunch, and the sheriff asks to tell him everything, promising that he will not give away forbidden secrets to those above. Juliet takes him to her room and shows him the toy George left her, but she gives him the note in a truncated form and then takes him to the lowest levels, where the sheriff has never been and had no idea the place existed. The woman opens a secret passage, the walls of which are scrawled and painted by those who lived here before the rebellion. After walking through it, the couple descends an iron staircase and finds themselves in a huge cave under the bunker. Juliet turns on the lights and Halston looks around in amazement at the giant machine standing in the middle of the cave. Apparently, it's the underground harvester that unknown ancestors used to create this shelter, anything of value removed from it long ago, and she realizes for the first time how little they know about the shelter and those who made it. The couple descends to the car, where George had set up a living area for himself. He kept the relics he'd found here, and he didn't want to make their relationship public, lest any suspicion fall on her. If he is arrested, Juliet shows Halston her friend's treasure, and then suddenly notices a wire coiled on a spool and stretching somewhere beyond the pad. Juliet pulls it out and finds a bag at the end with a hard drive stored there. Next to it are notes made by Allison's hand, which the sheriff instantly recognizes. It turns out that his wife was aware of everything that was going on, but said nothing to him. Holston demands that the rarities be sent to the furnace before anyone knows of their existence, but Juliet is against it and unwittingly echoes his wife's words about his inability to listen to people, which acts sobering to the sheriff. He admits that he can't go through the dining room because he can see her dead body under a tree in the window and advises the woman to sit quietly while he figures out the truth. The friend shakes her head. Juliet was harsh with the sheriff, so he didn't trust her completely. And then the woman admits that she didn't show the canvas everything. There was a sequel to the note. George writes that he found what he was looking for, but it's more dangerous than anything that came before it 1,000 times over. Juliet leaves, having received a wish to stay alive, and the deputy admits to Meru that Holston has left a successor. Except he's so baffled by the candidate that he doesn't want to talk about it. Mayor, about to meet the woman, while Juliet herself recalls a conversation with George when he jokingly confessed that the bundles of ropes on the combine would help him go back in time, he found an old blueprint in a tunnel located underwater. He intends to swim through it, holding onto the rope. The woman goes to the cave, and having lowered the rope, descends through it to the surface of the water at the foot of the machine. The idea of humanity surviving in a closed bunker is not new. But here one can just expect something completely unexpected and unbelievable. Anyway, we are waiting for the next episodes.